I never thought I'd become the kind of woman who would deliberately destroy someone else's marriage. But then again, I never imagined I'd discover my husband of 12 years had been in relationship with our company's marketing director for the past 18 months, or that she'd convince him to force me out of the business I helped build from nothing. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine wasn't cold. It was calculated, precise, and ultimately devastating. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. My name is Vivian Mercer. 6 years ago, my husband Ethan and I founded Horizon Analytics, a data consulting firm based in Westlake City. We started in our garage with nothing but 2 laptops, an ambitious business plan, and the kind of naive optimism only first-time entrepreneurs possess. I handled client relationships and operations while Ethan managed the technical side. Within 3 years, we'd grown to 30 employees and moved into sleek offices in the Pinnacle Tower downtown. Our marriage wasn't perfect, what marriage is, but we were partners in every sense of the word. At least that's what I believed. Everything changed when we hired Sophia Blackwell as our marketing director. Tall, confident, with a resume that boasted stints at 2 Fortune 500 companies, Sophia brought exactly the kind of polished presence we needed to attract larger clients. I still remember her interview, how she commanded the room, how Ethan seemed captivated by her presentation on rebranding strategies. I was the one who pushed to hire her, impressed by her credentials and the ambitious vision she had for our company. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have deleted her resume the moment it hit our inbox. The first 6 months were remarkable. Our client base expanded by 40%. Our social media presence tripled. Sophia seemed to work miracles, always staying late, always going the extra mile. I was grateful, appreciative of how she'd helped transform our modest company into something truly impressive. When she and Ethan started working closely on the new client acquisition strategy, I encouraged it. "You two make a great team," I told them one evening as we all stayed late reviewing quarterly projections. The irony of that statement haunts me still. I didn't notice the subtle shifts at first, how Ethan started coming home later and later, how he suddenly needed weekend strategy sessions that couldn't possibly wait until Monday, how his eyes would follow Sophia across the room during staff meetings. I was too busy managing our growing team, too focused on scaling operations to see what was happening right under my nose. The first concrete hint came from Darlene, our office manager. "Have you noticed anything off about Ethan and Sophia?" she asked cautiously one afternoon as we shared coffee in the break room. I brushed it off, laughing about how Ethan was just excited about their new marketing campaign. Darlene gave me a look I didn't understand then, a mixture of pity and concern that made perfect sense later. 3 weeks after that conversation, I had to fly to Phoenix for an emergency meeting with an unhappy client. My return flight was canceled due to severe weather, so I rented a car and drove through the night, arriving home at 5:30 a.m., 6 hours earlier than expected. The house was quiet when I entered. I kicked off my heels, dropped my suitcase in the foyer, and crept upstairs, not wanting to wake Ethan. But our bedroom door was closed. Unusual, since Ethan always left it cracked open while sleeping. I should have known then, should have prepared myself. But nothing prepares you for finding your husband in bed with another woman, especially when that woman is someone you hired, someone you trusted, someone whose success you'd championed. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Accusations. Tears. Ethan's pathetic attempts at explanation. "It just happened," he claimed, as if an 18-month affair could possibly just happen. Sophia said nothing, just gathered her clothes with surprising composure and left our home without meeting my eyes. I expected contrition, begging, promises to end it. Instead, 1 week later, Ethan handed me buyout papers. The board thinks it would be best if one of us stepped back from day-to-day operations, he said, sliding the document across our dining room table. For the good of the company. The board. Our board consisted of Ethan, myself, and 3 investors. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Sophia had helped him convince the investors this was necessary. The terms were insulting. A fraction of what my shares were worth, with a non-compete clause that would prevent me from working in our industry for 3 years. This is our company, Ethan. We built it together, I said, my voice breaking despite my determination to stay strong. It's just business, Viv, he replied, not meeting my eyes. You can still keep your shares. You just won't have an operational role. Just business. As if he hadn't destroyed our marriage. As if Sophia hadn't orchestrated my removal from my own company. As if I was supposed to quietly accept this betrayal and disappear. I signed the papers. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was broken. But as I walked out of Horizon Analytics for the last time, watching Sophia smirk from Ethan's office doorway, something hardened inside me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have anticipated, was that Sophia Blackwell had secrets of her own. And I was about to become very, very interested in uncovering them all. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The first week after being forced out of Horizon Analytics passed in a blur of anger and wine. I moved into a downtown apartment, sterile, modern, and utterly devoid of memories, while Ethan remained in our Westlake home. Friends called. I didn't answer. My mother offered to fly in from Portland. I declined. I needed space to think, to plan, to understand exactly what had happened and what I would do next. By the second week, the fog began to lift. I woke up one morning, made myself an actual breakfast instead of just coffee, and opened my laptop. It was time to stop wallowing and start investigating. If Sophia Blackwell could orchestrate my removal from my own company, I could certainly do some digging into her background. The obvious place to start was social media. Sophia's Instagram was a carefully curated showcase of professional achievements, fitness milestones, and tasteful vacation photos. Nothing revealing there. Her LinkedIn profile matched the impressive resume she'd presented during her interview. Berkeley. MBA, marketing positions at Lennox Global and Vantage Technologies before joining Horizon. But something about the timeline didn't sit right. There was a 6-month gap between Lennox and Vantage that wasn't explained. In today's relentless career trajectories, unexplained gaps raised questions. I made a note and kept digging. I found her husband, Marcus Blackwell, easily enough. A successful orthopedic surgeon at Metropolitan Medical Center. His professional bio included a photo of a handsome man with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident smile that expensive dentistry provides. Married for 9 years, no children. I scrolled through their limited public photos, noting how the genuine smiles of earlier years had morphed into the posed perfection of a couple who had mastered the art of public presentation. "Who are you really, Sophia?" I murmured, staring at a photo of her and Marcus at some charity gala, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Darlene, my former office manager, texted me 3 days later. "Having drinks with the team tomorrow at Harlow's. 7 p.m. Come if you want the real story." Harlow's was a dimly lit cocktail bar far enough from the office that we'd never run into other Horizon employees there. I arrived early, claiming a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. When Darlene walked in with Jasmine from accounting and Tyler from IT, I felt a rush of emotion I hadn't expected. Not just because they were risking their jobs by meeting me, but because they represented a life I'd built and lost. "We miss you," Jasmine said immediately, sliding into the booth. "It's not the same." Tyler nodded vigorously. "Total nightmare. Sophia's basically running everything now. Ethan just agrees with whatever she says. Darlene, ever the practical one, ordered a round of drinks before getting to the point. Sophia's been making changes, big ones. She convinced Ethan to pivot toward enterprise clients exclusively, dropping all the small businesses you brought on. The loyal ones, I said quietly. The clients who trusted us when no one else would. Exactly, Tyler confirmed. And she's brought in this whole new team from her previous company. 3 senior positions filled without even posting the jobs internally. I sipped my martini, processing this. From Vantage Technologies? Darlene exchanged glances with the others. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. Something felt off about her resume, so I did some checking. She never worked at Vantage, at least not in any capacity she claimed. I have a friend in HR there. They've never heard of her. My pulse quickened. What about Lennox Global? That part's true, Jasmine chimed in. But she didn't leave for the reasons she told everyone. My cousin works there in finance. Said there was some kind of scandal, but it was hushed up. Non-disclosure agreements all around. I leaned forward. What kind of scandal? Jasmine shrugged. All I know is it involved the CFO, who suddenly took early retirement right after she left. The pieces were starting to form a pattern, not clear yet, but suggesting something I could use. And no one at Horizon checked her. References thoroughly? Tyler snorted. Ethan handled her hiring personally after your initial interview with her. Said he'd take care of the background check himself. Of course he did. I wondered how long their affair had been going on before she even joined the company. Had they met previously? Was her hiring just a way to get her into his daily life? There's something else, Darlene said, lowering her voice. She's been meeting with Martin Sullivan. The name hit me like a physical blow. Martin Sullivan was CEO of Crestview Solutions, our biggest competitor. We'd lost several potential clients to them over the years, and Ethan and I had always been careful to avoid any industry events where we might encounter him. Meeting how? Business meetings? Definitely not business, Tyler said emphatically. I was working late last Thursday and saw them at Vespres. Definitely looked intimate. My mind raced with implications. Sophia was sleeping with my husband, taking over my company, and now potentially sharing company secrets with our biggest competitor? Either she was spectacularly careless or unbelievably confident. How's Marcus handling all this? I asked, referring to Sophia's surgeon husband. Oblivious, apparently, Darlene replied. He's doing some kind of research fellowship now, in Boston. Only comes home every other weekend. Long-distance marriage. Busy, successful husband. The picture was becoming clearer. As we parted ways that evening, Darlene hugged me tightly. Be careful, Viv. She's dangerous. Not just homewrecker dangerous, something else. There's something off about her. I nodded, thanked them all for taking the risk to meet me and promised to stay in touch, safely, discreetly. Driving home, my mind spun with possibilities. The gap in Sophia's resume, the scandal at Lennox, the clandestine meetings with Martin Sullivan, and a husband who was conveniently across the country while she dismantled my life. For the first time, since that morning I found her in my bed, I felt a flicker of something beyond rage, purpose. Knowledge was power, and I was just beginning to gather mine. Sophia Blackwell had secrets, and those secrets were going to be her undoing. When I arrived home, I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Boston. It was time to meet Dr. Marcus Blackwell and find out exactly what kind of marriage he thought he had. Boston greeted me with a bitter November wind that cut through my coat as I stepped out of Logan International. The city sprawled before me, a maze of academic institutions and medical facilities where Dr. Marcus Blackwell was currently immersed in his fellowship at the prestigious Lakeview Research Institute. I checked into the Meridian Hotel downtown. Expensive. Enough to be comfortable but not flashy enough to draw attention. This wasn't a vacation. It was reconnaissance. My story was simple and carefully crafted. I was Vanessa Porter, a healthcare journalist working on a feature about innovative orthopedic procedures. Dr. Blackwell's recent publication on minimally invasive spinal techniques had caught my attention, and I hoped to interview him for my piece. The email I'd sent from my newly created professional-looking account had received a prompt and courteous response. He'd be happy to meet tomorrow, afternoon at the Institute's cafe. I spent that evening researching Marcus beyond what I already knew. 47 years old, graduated top of his class from Johns Hopkins, widely published in medical journals, respected in his field. Photos showed him to be conventionally handsome in that polished, confident way of successful professionals. What the photos didn't reveal was whether he knew his wife was sleeping with my husband. The Lakeview Research Institute occupied a gleaming glass structure overlooking the Charles River. I arrived 20 minutes early, ordered a cappuccino, and selected a table with a good view of the entrance. At precisely 3:10 p.m., Marcus Blackwell strode in, taller in person than I'd expected, wearing scrubs under a white coat and carrying himself with the assured posture of someone accustomed to being the most qualified person in the room. "Ms. Porter?" he inquired, extending his hand. His smile was warm but professional. "Marcus Blackwell, pleasure to meet you." Up close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, evidence of a man who spent long hours focusing on intricate procedures. His wedding band gleamed on his left hand, platinum, substantial, a commitment on display. "Thank you so much for making time, Dr. Blackwell," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "I know how valuable your time is." He waved off my thanks as he sat down. "Always happy to discuss the research. Coffee?" I nodded toward my cup. "Already sorted. But please, go ahead." As he went to order, I took a steadying breath. The strange intimacy of meeting the husband of the woman who had helped destroy my marriage wasn't lost on me. He returned with an espresso and launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his current research, passion evident in his gestures, his eyes lighting up when describing particularly complex technical challenges. I asked intelligent questions, took notes, maintained eye contact. All the things a legitimate journalist would do. Gradually, I steered the conversation toward work-life balance. This fellowship must be demanding. How do you manage personal life alongside such intensive research? Something flickered across his face, so brief I almost missed it. A shadow, quickly controlled. "Well, my wife understands the demands of a high-pressure career. She's quite successful herself, runs marketing for a growing tech company in Westlake City." I nodded sympathetically. Long-distance relationships require special commitment. Indeed. He rotated his espresso cup slightly. "We're both driven people. Supporting each other's ambitions has always been fundamental to our relationship." "How often do you get to see each other?" I asked, maintaining my professional tone while watching his reactions carefully. "Every few weekends. Not ideal, but it's temporary. 6 more months of research, then back to regular practice." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Modern technology helps. Video calls, texts throughout the day." I nodded understandingly. "That must make a difference. Does she ever visit you here in Boston?" Another minute hesitation. "Her schedule is quite demanding at the moment. Their company is going through significant changes." I wondered if those significant changes included forcing out one of the founders and sleeping with the other. I pushed the thought aside and maintained my professional demeanor. Balance is always the challenge, isn't it? My last interview subject was actually married to his research partner. They said working together strengthened their relationship, though I imagine that brings its own complications. Marcus took a sip of his espresso, his expression carefully neutral. "Sophia and I have always maintained separate professional lives. It gives us something unique to bring to dinner conversations." As our interview continued, I wove personal questions among the professional ones, creating a composite picture of Marcus and Sophia Blackwell's marriage. They'd met at a charity fundraiser 9 years ago. No children. Career timing was never right. he explained with practiced ease. They maintained residences in both Boston and Westlake City, though the Boston apartment was recent, acquired for the fellowship. What emerged was the portrait of a marriage that existed more on paper than in reality. Two ambitious people who had built parallel lives that occasionally intersected but rarely merged. I wondered if this had always been their arrangement, or if it had evolved into convenient distance over time. As we wrapped up, I asked if he'd be willing to be photographed for the article. Of course, he agreed, though I'm afraid I look rather tired today. Fellowship hours are brutal. I assured him it was just for my reference, not publication yet, and snapped a couple of photos with my phone. Then, taking a calculated risk, I added, "Your wife must be very proud of your work. Would you mind if I reached out to her as well? Sometimes partners offer interesting perspectives on the work-life dynamics." For the first time, Marcus looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I don't think that would be necessary for your article's focus. Sophia is extremely busy with her company's transition right now." Interesting choice of words. Transition, not growth. I wondered what he knew about Horizon Analytics' current situation. Of course, I conceded. Just thought I'd ask. This has been tremendously helpful, Dr. Blackwell. As we parted ways, he handed me his card. Feel free to email if you have follow-up questions. I'd be interested in reading the piece when it's published. Absolutely, I promised, knowing the article would never exist. Back in my hotel room, I reviewed my notes and the subtle tells I'd observed. Marcus Blackwell was either an excellent actor or genuinely unaware of his wife's affair. The carefully constructed narrative of their supportive long-distance marriage had well-rehearsed edges, a story told so many times it had become their truth. But beneath that polished surface, I'd glimpsed moments of hesitation that suggested cracks in the foundation. I pulled out my laptop and began searching Boston real estate listings. If they truly maintained two residences, there would be records. Within an hour, I found it. A luxury condo in Back Bay purchased 6 months ago, just before the fellowship began. Listed owners, Marcus and Sophia Blackwell. Next, I searched local events, medical fundraisers, anything where a surgeon's wife might make an appearance. Through persistent digging, I found photographs from a hospital benefit 3 months ago. There was Marcus in a tuxedo, smiling at the camera. Beside him stood a woman who was definitely not Sophia. Blonde, petite, introduced in the caption as Dr. Marcus Blackwell and guest. I sat back, processing this new information. While Sophia was dismantling my marriage and taking over my company, in Westlake City, her husband was attending social functions with another woman in Boston. Perhaps theirs was an open marriage, an arrangement built on mutual understanding. Or perhaps, and this possibility sparked something calculating within me, perhaps Dr. Blackwell was unaware of exactly how his wife spent her time back home. Reached for my phone and pulled up the photos I'd taken of Marcus. In one, his expression was unguarded, focused on explaining a complex procedure. I studied his face, wondering what he would do if he knew the truth. If he understood that while he built his research career in Boston, Sophia was building a very different kind of life 3,000 miles away. The next morning, I checked out of the Meridian and caught a flight home, my mind working through possibilities. I'd come to Boston looking for leverage, for a better understanding of my adversary. I was returning with something potentially more valuable. The realization that Sophia Blackwell's carefully constructed life rested on geographical separation and strategic omissions. As the plane touched down in Westlake City, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced since finding Sophia in my bedroom. I didn't just want revenge anymore, I wanted justice. And to get it, I needed to understand exactly what game Sophia was playing with Horizon Analytics, with Ethan, with Martin Sullivan from Crestview Solutions, and with her conveniently distant husband. Back in Westlake City, I channeled my energy into building a comprehensive picture of Sophia Blackwell's activities. Whatever game she was playing involved multiple parties, and I needed to understand all the pieces before making my move. The mystery of her unexplained 6-month employment gap between Lennox Global and what she claimed was Vantage Technologies became my starting point. I reached out to a former colleague, James Chen, who had left Horizon Analytics a year before to start his own cybersecurity firm. Our friendship had always been solid, and he owed me for recommending him to several lucrative clients when he first launched his business. "Unusual request," I said when we met at a quiet bar on the outskirts of town. "But I need information on someone, and it has to stay completely confidential." James studied my face carefully. "This about Ethan and what happened at Horizon." News traveled fast in our industry. I nodded, not bothering to hide the truth from him. "More specifically, it's about Sophia Blackwell." He whistled low. "The new marketing director. Word is she's basically running the company now." "That's one way to put it," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I need to know what happened during a 6-month period between her jobs at Lennox Global and supposedly Vantage Technologies. Something doesn't add up." James didn't ask why. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a few notes. "Employment records, financial activity, legal issues?" "All of it," I confirmed, "especially anything involving Crestview Solutions." His eyebrows shot up. "Martin Sullivan's company? That's interesting." "Potentially very interesting," I agreed. "How long do you need?" "Give me 3 days," he said. "And Viv, whatever you're planning, be careful." Those 3 days crawled by. I used the time to establish a routine that anyone watching would find utterly unremarkable. A woman rebuilding her life after divorce. I joined a gym, applied for consulting positions, had coffee with former clients who'd reached out after hearing about my departure from Horizon. I was the picture of someone moving forward, focusing on herself. Nothing to suggest I was methodically planning anything beyond personal recovery. When James finally called, his voice carried an undercurrent of excitement. "You need to see this in person. My office tonight, 8 p.m. James's office was a converted warehouse space in the industrial district where exposed brick met cutting-edge technology. Security was tight, biometric scans and multiple locked doors before we reached his private workspace. Whatever he'd found, he wasn't taking chances. With digital transmission. "Sophia Blackwell," he began, pulling up files on his oversized monitor, "is not who she claims to be. Or rather, she is now, but wasn't always." He displayed 2 driver's licenses side by side. Both featured Sophia, but with different names. The older one identified her as Sophia Reeves. "She was Sophia Reeves until 7 years ago," James explained. "Changed her name right before marrying Dr. Blackwell. Not illegal, of course, but interesting timing." "What about the employment gap?" James's expression turned grim. "That's where things get interesting. After leaving Lennox Global, where, by the way, she was asked to resign following an inappropriate relationship with the CFO that nearly led to a sexual harassment lawsuit, she didn't go to Vantage Technologies. She worked at Tricor Dynamics." The name registered immediately. Tricor had been a promising startup that collapsed spectacularly amid accusations of corporate espionage and data theft 3 years ago. Their CEO had faced criminal charges, though most were eventually dropped in exchange for a substantial settlement. "She was their director of strategic partnerships," James continued. "Hired personally by the CEO, according to internal documents. When everything fell apart, she somehow avoided being named in any of the legal proceedings. No charges, not even called as a witness." My mind raced. She must have had protection. Or leverage. "That's my guess," James nodded. "But here's where your Crestview Solutions connection gets interesting. Guess who acquired most of Tricor's client list after the collapse?" "Martin Sullivan," I breathed. "Exactly." James pulled up another document. "And during the month surrounding Tricor's collapse, Sophia Reeves, now Blackwell, had multiple meetings with Sullivan. Hotel reservations, restaurant receipts, all expensed to different accounts but clearly connecting them. She was feeding him information, I concluded, helping Crestview acquire Tricor's clients before the company imploded. That's my reading, James agreed. And now she's meeting with him again while working at Horizon. The pattern was becoming clear. Sophia used romantic relationships to gain access, exploited that access for corporate intelligence, then leveraged that intelligence for her next move. She'd done it at Lennox with the CFO, at Tricor with the CEO, and now at Horizon with Ethan. There's more, James said, scrolling to another document. Remember that apartment in Boston registered to both Marcus and Sophia? Turns out Marcus refinanced their Westlake City house to purchase it. But Sophia's name was added to the Boston property deed after the purchase, almost as an afterthought. Does she even spend time there? James shook his head. Credit card records show she's been to Boston exactly twice in the past 6 months. Meanwhile, there are regular charges at a restaurant called Amelia's in Boston every Thursday night. 2. People. Consistently. Marcus and someone else, I murmured. A resident physician named Allison Carter, according to social media tags. They're discreet but not invisible. I leaned back, absorbing all this information. Sophia's husband was involved, with someone else in Boston while she orchestrated corporate machinations and slept with my husband in Westlake City. They were essentially living separate lives while maintaining the facade of marriage. What about her meetings with Sullivan from Crestview? I asked. Recent ones here in Westlake. James pulled up yet another file. 2 meetings at Vespries, like your colleague mentioned. But there was another at the Lakeside Hotel bar last week, 3 hours, according to the timestamp on her credit card. The Lakeside was known for its discretion and privacy, the kind of place you went when you didn't want to be observed too closely. Not for the first time, I wondered if Sophia's relationship with Sullivan was purely business or something more complicated. One last thing, James said, bringing up a final document. Horizon Analytics is preparing a bid for Nexacom's business intelligence contract, worth about $20 million over 5 years. I frowned. How do you know that? That would be highly confidential. It is, he confirmed. But Crestview Solutions is also preparing a bid, and their proposal contains sections that are eerily similar to Horizon's preliminary drafts. My stomach clenched. She's selling our proprietary information. To Sullivan. Looks that way. The bid deadline is in 2 weeks. As I drove home that night, fragments of a plan began forming in my mind. Sophia Blackwell had built her career on deception, leveraging relationships for corporate gain while ensuring she always emerged unscathed. She dismantled my marriage and pushed me out of my own company. Now she was apparently selling Horizon's confidential information to our biggest competitor. I thought about Marcus in Boston, likely unaware of his wife's true activities. I thought about Ethan, who'd betrayed our marriage and business partnership, but probably had no idea Sophia was feeding our company's secrets to Crestview. And I thought about Martin Sullivan, who seemed to be playing his own angle in Sophia's complicated game. The next morning, I made 3 calls. First to a private investigator I trusted, requesting very specific surveillance. Second to Darlene at Horizon, asking her to discreetly send me any information about the Nexacom bid. And third to the Lakeside Hotel, reserving a room for the following evening, the same evening Sophia had standing dinner plans with Ethan, according to the consistent pattern of his credit card charges. If Martin Sullivan was meeting with Sophia, to acquire Horizon's confidential information, I needed evidence. And if I could obtain that evidence, I would have the leverage to not only protect the company I'd built, but also to ensure Sophia Blackwell finally faced consequences for her actions. For the first time since discovering Ethan's betrayal, I felt a sense of empowerment. Sophia had underestimated me, assuming I would crumble under the weight of personal and professional loss. She didn't realize I was merely regrouping, gathering information, and preparing to strike back with precision. That night, I reviewed everything I'd learned, creating a timeline of Sophia's deceptions across companies and relationships. The pattern was clear, consistent, and potentially devastating if exposed. Now I needed irrefutable evidence linking her to corporate espionage. Once I had that, I could approach each player in her game separately, dismantling her carefully constructed house of cards one relationship at a time, starting with her marriage to Marcus Blackwell. The Lakeside Hotel maintained an air of old-world luxury despite its modern amenities. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings while discreet security cameras monitored every entrance and common area. I'd selected my room strategically, not too close to the bar to raise suspicion, but with a clear path to observe comings and goings. The private investigator I'd hired, Eleanor Voss, a former intelligence operative with an impressive record, had already placed subtle monitoring equipment in the bar area. "They won't detect anything," she assured me as we tested the equipment from my room. "The cameras are focused on the central table, Sullivan's preferred spot according to the staff I interviewed. The video feed on my laptop showed a perfect view of the bar's most secluded corner. Audio would be challenging given the ambient noise, but Eleanor had positioned directional microphones that should capture the essential conversation. "Remember," she cautioned, "this recording won't be admissible in court, but it should give you enough leverage for whatever you're planning." I nodded, not bothering to elaborate on exactly what that might be. Eleanor was professional enough not to ask for details beyond her assignment. At 7:30 p.m., Martin Sullivan arrived, precisely on schedule. He ordered a scotch, neat, and selected the exact table Eleanor had predicted. At 7:43, Sophia entered, wearing a sleek black dress that was just professional enough to claim she'd come directly from work, yet calculated to draw attention. She ordered a gin and tonic, then joined Sullivan, leaning in with practiced intimacy. Tio couldn't hear their initial conversation over the bar's ambient noise, but body language spoke volumes. Sullivan's confident posture, the way Sophia angled toward him, touching his arm occasionally to emphasize points. They had the comfortable familiarity of people who'd done business together for some time. 20 minutes into their meeting, Sophia opened her laptop and turned it toward Sullivan. The camera angle didn't allow us to see the screen, but Sullivan's expression shifted from casual interest to intense focus. He nodded several times, pointing at something on the display. Eleanor adjusted the audio reception, and fragments of conversation became audible. Proprietary algorithm they've developed specifically for Nexicom's needs. Implementation. Timeline accelerated by 6 weeks compared to pricing structure undercuts our initial proposal by nearly 18%. My hands clenched involuntarily. She was revealing everything about Horizon's bid for the Nexicom contract, our technical approach, timeline, and pricing strategy. The very information that would allow Crestview to revise their proposal and win the contract. What happened next confirmed my suspicions about the true nature of their relationship. As Sophia closed her laptop, Sullivan placed his hand over hers, leaning closer. Their conversation lowered to inaudible levels, but the shift from business to personal was unmistakable. When they left the bar 40 minutes later, they took the elevator together, not toward the lobby, but upward to the hotel rooms. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Shall I continue surveillance?" I shook my head. "Not necessary. I have what I need." Once Eleanor departed with her equipment, I sat alone in my hotel room, reviewing the video footage. The evidence was clear. Sophia Blackwell was selling Horizon Analytics confidential information to our biggest competitor, compromising a potential $20 million contract, and she was apparently involved with Sullivan romantically, or at least physically, while maintaining her relationship with Ethan and her marriage to Marcus. The complexity of her deception was almost impressive. but it also made her vulnerable. A structure built on so many lies required constant maintenance. Remove one supporting falsehood, and the entire edifice might collapse. The next morning, I contacted James again, sharing what I'd discovered and requesting his help with the technical aspects of my plan. Then I booked another flight to Boston. This time, I didn't arrange to meet Marcus Blackwell as a journalist. Instead, I monitored his schedule through hospital records James had accessed, noting his regular Thursday dinner at Amelia's with Allison Carter. The restaurant was small, intimate, with tables close enough to make privacy challenging, but far enough apart to maintain the illusion of discretion. I arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the door, but partially obscured by a decorative wine rack. When Marcus entered with Allison, their body language told a story beyond casual friendship. His hand at the small of her back, her unconscious lean toward him as they were seated, the easy intimacy of people comfortable with each other's physical presence. They were seated 3 tables away, close enough that I could hear fragments of their conversation. Discussions of hospital politics, shared patients, plans for the weekend. Nothing explicitly romantic, but the undercurrent was unmistakable. This was not their first dinner together, nor would it be their last. I waited until they had ordered and settled into conversation before approaching their table. Marcus looked up, confusion crossing his features before recognition dawned. "Ms. Porter," he said, clearly trying to place me in this unexpected context. "Dr. Blackwell," I acknowledged with a nod. "I apologize for the interruption. I was hoping to speak with you about something rather important." His expression shifted to concern. "Is this about the article?" "Not exactly," I replied. "It's about your wife, Sophia." At the mention of Sophia, Allison's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Marcus glanced briefly at his companion before returning his attention to me. "Perhaps we could schedule a more appropriate time." "I'm afraid this can't wait," I cut in smoothly, "and I think Dr. Carter might want to hear this as well." Surprise flickered across both their faces at my use of Allison's name. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, his voice lowering. "My name is Vivian Mercer," I replied, sliding into the empty chair at their table. "I'm the co-founder of Horizon Analytics in Westlake City. Or I was, until your wife orchestrated my removal from the company after beginning an affair with my husband." The color drained from Marcus's face. Allison reached for her water glass, knuckles whitening around the stem. "I don't know what you're talking." "Please," I interrupted gently. "We're all adults here, and I think we're all operating under certain convenient fictions that need to be addressed." I removed a tablet from my bag and placed it on the table, queuing up the video from the Lakeside Hotel bar. "This was recorded 2 days ago. That's your wife meeting with Martin Sullivan, CEO of our biggest competitor, Crestview Solutions." Marcus watched, expression hardening as the video progressed to show Sophia sharing confidential information, then the unmistakable shift to personal intimacy before they left together. "Turn it off," he said quietly after a minute. I complied, returning the tablet to my bag. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Dr. Blackwell, or to expose whatever arrangement you have with Dr. Carter. I came because your wife is not only betraying you and my husband, she's committing corporate espionage that could destroy the company I built." Marcus sat back, eyes closing briefly. When he opened them, the professional confidence had been replaced by something rawer, more vulnerable. "What do you want from me?" "Information first," I replied honestly. "How much do you know about Sophia's past, particularly her time at Tricor? Dynamics?" The question clearly surprised him. "Tricor? She never worked there. She was at Vantage Technologies before joining your company." I shook my head slowly. "No, she wasn't. She was at Tricor during their collapse, working closely with their CEO and feeding information to Martin Sullivan, just as she's doing now with Horizon." For the next 15 minutes, I outlined everything I'd discovered. Sophia's name change before their marriage, her actual employment history, her pattern of using relationships for corporate gain. As I spoke, Marcus's expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a resigned recognition. I suspected something wasn't right, he admitted finally. There were inconsistencies in her stories, gaps she could never quite explain. But I was comfortable with our arrangement. His eyes flickered briefly to Allison, who had remained silent throughout my revelation. Your marriage provided her respectability, while allowing you both to pursue your own interests, I suggested. I'm not here to judge that. But she's crossed a line from personal deception to criminal activity, and she's going to destroy Horizon in the process. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus questioned, his voice steady despite the emotional impact of our conversation. I need your help to stop her, I stated simply. And in return, I promise that whatever arrangement you and Dr. Carter have will remain private. Marcus and Allison exchanged a long look, some unspoken communication passing between them. What kind of help? He finally asked. I laid out the first phase of my plan, specific, limited, and designed to protect both Horizon Analytics and his reputation while ensuring Sophia faced consequences for her actions. As our conversation concluded, Marcus nodded solemnly. I'll do it, not just for you, but because this needs to end. The deception, the manipulation, all of it. Leaving the restaurant, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication at having confirmed my suspicions, sympathy for Marcus despite his own deceptions, and a renewed determination to see my plan through. The first domino was positioned. Now I needed to return to Westlake City and prepare for the next phase, confronting Ethan with the truth about the woman he'd sacrificed our marriage to possess. Back in Westlake City, timing became critical. The Nexicom bid was due in 5 days, and Crestview Solutions was undoubtedly finalizing their proposal based on the information Sophia had provided. I needed to act decisively before irreparable damage was done to Horizon Analytics, the company I still loved despite everything that had happened. My first stop was James's office to review the evidence package we'd compiled, video footage from the Lakeside Hotel, documentation of Sophia's actual employment history, financial records showing suspicious patterns, and transcripts of my conversation with Marcus Blackwell, which he had agreed to record. This is comprehensive, James observed, scanning through the digital files. But are you sure confronting Ethan directly is the best approach? He might just warn Sophia. That's exactly what I'm counting on, I replied. I don't just want to stop the current leak. I want to ensure Sophia can never do this again. James looked skeptical but nodded. Your call. The secure server is ready. Once uploaded, these files can be accessed by anyone with the password, but they can't be deleted or altered, even by us. Perfect, I confirmed. And the timestamps? All authenticated through blockchain. No one can claim they've been manipulated. With the technical preparations complete, I messaged Ethan requesting a meeting. Personal matters to discuss. The Arbor Cafe tomorrow, 10 a.m. His response came quickly. Can't tomorrow. Nexicom presentation prep all day. I pressed. This can't wait. It concerns Sophia directly. 30 minutes. That's all I ask. The delay before his response told me more than his words. Fine. 10 a.m., 30 minutes only. The Arbor Cafe had been our weekend tradition when we first started Horizon, the place where we'd sketch business plans on napkins and dream about the future. Its familiarity would either put Ethan at ease or make him profoundly uncomfortable. Either worked for my purposes. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. Ordered a black coffee and an almond croissant I had no intention of eating. My nerves weren't from fear but from anticipation, the culmination of weeks of methodical planning. Ethan arrived exactly on time, looking simultaneously powerful and exhausted. His tailored suit couldn't disguise the shadows under his eyes or the tightness around his mouth. Success with Sophia was clearly taking its toll. "You look tired," I observed as he sat down. He ignored the comment. "What's so urgent, Viv? The Nexicom presentation is compromised," I interrupted flatly. "Crestview Solutions has your entire proposal. Every detail, every pricing structure, every technical specification." His face went blank with shock, then darkened with anger. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof, or is this some kind of revenge tactic?" I finished for him. "You know me better than that, Ethan. I've never operated on emotion over facts." I opened my tablet and placed it between us, queuing up the video from the Lakeside Hotel bar. "This was recorded 3 days ago. Your girlfriend meeting with Martin Sullivan." Ethan's expression remained neutral as the video began, but I saw the exact moment comprehension hit, when Sophia opened her laptop and turned it toward Sullivan. The slight widening of his eyes, the imperceptible tightening of his jaw. "Turn it off," he said, in nearly the same tone Marcus had used in Boston. I complied but kept the tablet open. "That's not all. Sophia Blackwell isn't who she claims to be." Over the next several minutes, I methodically laid out everything I'd discovered: her name change, her actual employment history, her pattern of corporate espionage, her relationship with Sullivan, and finally, the truth about her marriage to Marcus. "She's played this game before, Ethan, at Lennox Global with their CFO, at Tricor Dynamics with their CEO, now at Horizon with you. She gains access through relationships, extracts valuable information, feeds it to competitors, then moves on. Once the damage is done." Ethan sat in stunned silence, processing everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "Why would you show me this? After everything that happened between us?" The question caught me off guard. I'd prepared for denial, for anger, for accusations, but not for this apparent bewilderment at my motives. "Because Horizon Analytics is still part of me," I answered honestly. "I helped build it from nothing. I won't watch it be destroyed, even if I'm no longer part of its future." "And revenge had nothing to do with it?" His tone was skeptical. I met his gaze steadily. "I won't pretend I haven't fantasized about Sophia getting what she deserves. But this isn't about revenge, Ethan. It's about stopping someone who has made a career out of corporate sabotage before she does irreparable harm." He looked away, eyes focusing on something distant. "The Nexicom contract would have secured our position in the enterprise market for years." "And it still can," I assured him. "But you need to act quickly. Sullivan will use this information to undercut your bid unless you change your approach entirely." "How do I know this isn't some elaborate setup?" he challenged, though his tone lacked conviction. "These videos could be manipulated, the evidence fabricated." In response, I sent him a secure link to the server James had prepared. "Everything is here, authenticated, time-stamped, irrefutable, including a recorded conversation with Marcus Blackwell confirming that Sophia lied about her employment history and kept her activities in Westlake hidden from him." Ethan's expression shifted as he scrolled through the files on his phone, the weight of evidence becoming impossible to deny. I watched various emotions play across his face: disbelief, anger, humiliation, and finally, a cold determination I recognized from our early business days when competitors had tried to undermine us. "What are you planning to do with all this?" he asked finally. "That depends on what happens next," I replied carefully. "I have no interest in damaging Horizon, but Sophia needs to be removed from the company immediately, and Sullivan needs to understand that using stolen information will have consequences." Ethan nodded slowly, processing options. "And if I handle this internally? Then the evidence remains private, accessible only to us and to Marcus Blackwell." No public exposure. No scandal that might harm Horizon's reputation. The relief in his expression was palpable. Despite everything, his primary concern was still the company, something we still shared, regardless of our personal fracture. Why? Now? He asked suddenly. You've clearly been investigating for weeks. Why bring this to me just days before the Nexicom deadline? I allowed myself a small smile. Because timing matters. You needed absolute proof before you would believe me. And I needed to ensure Sophia wouldn't have time to cover her tracks or create an alternative narrative. We sat in silence for a moment, the remnants of our partnership manifesting in this strange collaboration. Finally, Ethan straightened. Decision made. I'll handle Sophia. Today. The Nexicom bid will need to be completely revised. I'd suggest focusing on the proprietary analytics engine, I offered. It's the one thing she couldn't fully explain to Sullivan because she doesn't understand the technical architecture. Ethan nodded, already thinking strategically again. And Sullivan? Leave Sullivan to me, I said calmly. I have a separate conversation planned with him this afternoon. Surprise flickered across Ethan's face. You're meeting with Martin Sullivan? Let's just say he'll be receiving some very interesting information about his newest source of corporate intelligence. As our conversation concluded, Ethan stood awkwardly, clearly struggling with what to say. Professional boundaries had been re-established, but the personal damage remained unaddressed. I'm sorry, Viv, he finally offered. Not just for us, but for not seeing Sophia clearly, for trusting her over you, for everything. I nodded once, acknowledging but not absolving. The company deserves better. Make sure it gets it. After Ethan left, I remained at our table, allowing the emotional weight of the conversation to settle. The first phase of my plan had gone as expected. Ethan would confront Sophia, who would undoubtedly attempt to warn Sullivan, triggering the monitoring protocols James had established on both their communications. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Leaving office with S now. Heated conversation in parking garage. Monitoring activated. Everything was proceeding according to plan. By this evening, Sophia would be removed from Horizon Analytics, her access to company systems revoked, her corporate sabotage halted. But that was only the first step. For true justice, and yes, revenge, I needed to ensure she could never rebuild from this. That meant neutralizing her relationship with Sullivan before she could convert him from co-conspirator to savior. I gathered my things and headed to my next appointment, where I would deliver the final blow to Sophia Blackwell's carefully constructed house of cards. Martin Sullivan was about to learn exactly who he'd been dealing with, and why continuing that relationship would be the most expensive mistake of his career. Crestview Solutions occupied the 32nd floor of the Pinnacle Tower, ironically, just 4 floors above Horizon Analytics. I'd never visited before, having always considered the building enemy territory. But today I walked through the sleek lobby with purposeful confidence. The receptionist smiled professionally as I approached. Vivian Mercer to see Martin Sullivan. I believe he's expecting me. This wasn't entirely true. Sullivan had received my message requesting an urgent meeting regarding mutual business interests. But he didn't know who I was, at least not yet. His assistant had scheduled me for 30 minutes, likely assuming I was a potential client. I was escorted to a minimalist conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 5 minutes later, Martin Sullivan strode in, tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. Ms. Mercer, he began, extending his hand. Martin Sullivan, I apologize, but I don't believe we've met before. No, we haven't, I confirmed, shaking his hand firmly. But we have several acquaintances in common, including Sophia Blackwell. His expression remained neutral, but his posture stiffened slightly. Professional instincts kicking in, assessing potential threats. I see. And what mutual business interests? Did you want to discuss? I smiled. Why don't we start with the Nexicom contract? Specifically, the proprietary information about Horizon Analytics' bid that Sophia provided to you earlier this week. Sullivan's poker face was impressive, but the momentary pause before his response spoke volumes. I'm afraid I have no idea what. Let's not waste time with denials, Mr. Sullivan. I interrupted smoothly, placing my tablet on the conference table. I have video evidence of your meeting with Sophia at the Lakeside Hotel, where she clearly shared confidential information about Horizon's proposal. I also have financial records showing payments from a Crestview subsidiary to an account connected to Sophia. I activated the tablet, showing him a brief clip from the hotel bar. His expression remained impassive, but I noted the slight tightening around his eyes. Even if this were true, he replied carefully, I don't see how it concerns you, Ms. Mercer. I'm Vivian Mercer, co-founder of Horizon Analytics, I explained, watching recognition dawn in his eyes. Though you might know me better as Ethan's wife, the one Sophia has been so determined to erase from the company narrative. Sullivan assessed me with new interest. I was under the impression you'd left Horizon voluntarily. An impression? Sophia worked hard to create, I acknowledged. Just as she's worked to create the impression that she's a loyal employee of Horizon while selling proprietary information to you. Sullivan leaned back, calculations clearly running behind his shrewd eyes. Assuming any of this were true, which I'm not confirming, what exactly are you proposing, Ms. Mercer? I'm not proposing anything. I'm here to inform you of several facts that might influence your business decisions, I replied. First, Ethan is currently terminating Sophia's employment at Horizon based on evidence of corporate espionage. Second, any Nexicom proposal from Crestview containing information derived from Horizon's proprietary strategies will trigger immediate legal action backed by the evidence I've gathered. I paused, letting him absorb this before delivering the final blow. And third, Sophia Blackwell has a documented history of this exact behavior at multiple companies, including Tricor Dynamics, where she provided you with similar insider information before their collapse. That landed precisely as intended. Sullivan's composure cracked, surprise registering briefly before he controlled it. You've been thorough, he conceded after a moment. Very, I confirmed, including discovering that the SEC briefly investigated you after the Tricor situation, though the case was closed without charges. I imagine they'd be interested in this new evidence of a pattern. Sullivan studied me with newfound respect. So this is blackmail? This is a courtesy, I corrected. Horizon will be submitting a completely revised bid for the Nexicom contract, one based on technologies Sophia knew nothing about. I'm giving you the opportunity to do the same, rather than submitting a proposal that demonstrably contains stolen intellectual property. And if Crestview submits a clean proposal? He asked. Then, may the best company win, I replied simply. Fair competition is all I've ever wanted, Sullivan nodded slowly, decision apparently made. And what about Sophia? I assume she's attempting damage control. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from James. S attempting to contact MSE. Repeatedly. Call, text, email. Intercept protocols active. I smiled faintly. She's trying to reach you, yes. Probably to offer some explanation or to propose a new arrangement now that her position at Horizon is terminated. I've temporarily disrupted those communications to ensure we could have this conversation uninterrupted. Sullivan actually looked impressed. You've outmaneuvered her completely. I've simply exposed the truth, I countered, something long overdue. As our meeting concluded, Sullivan walked me to the elevator, his manner thoughtful. You could have destroyed Crestview with this information, he observed. Why didn't you? Because this isn't about destroying companies or careers, I replied as the elevator doors opened. It's about accountability. Sophia will face consequences for her actions. How you proceed is entirely your choice. The final piece fell into Place that evening when I received confirmation from both James and Darlene that Sophia had been escorted from Horizon's offices, her access revoked, her company devices confiscated. Within hours, she had made 17 attempts to contact Sullivan, none successful. By morning, she would discover that her credentials for all Horizon systems had been invalidated, and that her husband in Boston had been fully informed of her activities. 3 days later, as I was reviewing potential consulting opportunities, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. It contained only an address in the affluent Lakeside district and a time, 7 p.m. Curious rather than concerned, I drove to the location, a stylish wine bar I'd never visited before. Seated at a corner table was Ethan, looking both exhausted and somehow lighter than when I'd last seen him. "Thank you for coming," he said as I joined him. "I wasn't sure you would." Curiosity won out, I admitted. "How's the Nexacom situation?" "We submitted the revised bid yesterday," he replied. "Completely rebuilt around the quantum encryption protocol the development team has been quietly working on, something Sophia knew nothing about." "And Crestview?" "Sullivan withdrew their proposal entirely," Ethan said, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "Claimed strategic repositioning priorities or some corporate jargon. Nexacom's decision is next week, but without Crestview, our chances are excellent." I nodded, genuinely pleased for Horizon despite everything. "And Sophia?" Ethan's expression hardened. "Gone. Completely. The board voted unanimously to pursue legal action for breach of confidentiality and corporate espionage. Her husband's attorneys reached out yesterday. Apparently they're divorcing, and he's cooperating fully with our legal team." "And Sullivan?" "Keeping his distance," Ethan confirmed. "Whatever you said to him was effective." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of recent events settling between us. Finally, Ethan spoke again, his voice quiet. "The board also took a vote on another matter. They've asked me to invite you back to Horizon. Full reinstatement of your position and equity, with additional compensation for recent circumstances." The offer caught me completely off guard. "Whose idea was this?" "Mine," Ethan admitted. "But the board agreed unanimously. Horizon needs you, Viv. I'm not asking for personal forgiveness or reconciliation. This is strictly business. The company is stronger with you than without you." I considered his words carefully. The vindication was undeniable, the company that had pushed me out now asking me to return. But the prospect of working alongside Ethan again, navigating the personal history between us daily, gave me pause. "I need time to think about it," I finally replied. Ethan nodded, clearly having anticipated this response. "Of course, the offer has no expiration date." As we parted ways that evening, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. My goal had been justice, ensuring Sophia faced consequences for her actions while protecting Horizon from her machinations. I'd accomplished that more thoroughly than I could have imagined. 2 weeks later, I received notification that Sophia Blackwell had left the country, reportedly relocating to Singapore following the finalization of her divorce and the settlement of civil claims brought by Horizon. The rapid dissolution of her carefully constructed life was the natural consequence of her own actions. Justice served without me having to pursue further measures. As for Horizon Analytics, they won the Nexacom contract, securing their position in the enterprise market. I declined the offer to return, choosing instead to launch my own consulting firm specializing in corporate intelligence protection, helping companies identify and defend against exactly the kind of espionage Sophia had practiced. Ethan and I established a professional detente, occasionally consulting on industry matters but maintaining careful personal boundaries. The company I had helped build continued to thrive, now inoculated against the kind of infiltration that had nearly destroyed it. And I found unexpected satisfaction in protecting other businesses from similar vulnerabilities, turning my experience of betrayal into expertise that others valued. Revenge, I discovered, wasn't found in Sophia's downfall or in the dissolution of her carefully crafted deceptions, though those provided undeniable satisfaction. The true revenge was in reclaiming my own narrative, rebuilding on my terms, and ultimately creating something stronger than what had been taken from me. I never saw Sophia Blackwell again. But occasionally, when advising clients on protecting their most valuable information, I think of her, the woman who underestimated me so completely, who never imagined that in pushing me out of my company, she had unwittingly set in motion the sequence of events that would ultimately destroy everything she had schemed to build. Sometimes justice requires a catalyst. Sometimes accountability needs someone willing to investigate, to connect dots, to expose truths others have worked to conceal. And sometimes, the most effective revenge isn't destruction but reconstruction, building something new and valuable from the ashes of betrayal. In the end, I didn't just survive Sophia's attempt to erase me. I thrived because of it, finding strength and purpose I might never have discovered otherwise. That, perhaps, is the most satisfying revenge of all. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.